Hello, this is Craig from Ultra Real Assets. In this video, I'm going to be covering a brand new feature in Mesh Tools for SurfForge, which allows you to use SurfForge elements as actual game objects in your game. SurfForge by default doesn't actually create run game objects. It simply creates geometry that renders to this texture panel here and is never intended to actually be used as a runtime game element. In fact, if you run it, it's going to look like this and not very attractive or useful from a runtime standpoint. But Mesh Tools can now convert these objects to an object that will run at runtime. So I've loaded up the demo scene, which contains a collection of objects that we can convert to both detailed prefabs and runtime prefabs. The elements need to be grouped together into separate parts, as you see. If you're unsure how to accomplish this, please refer to the Creating Detailed Prefab video, and that will explain the grouping process. But now that have these created, you have the option of either individually exporting these or multiple exporting these. But the very first thing you absolutely need to do is you want to make sure you go into SurfForge, render out the texture at the resolution you want. I'm going to say 2048, and we're going to render it, and then I'm going to export it. And I'm going to export it to a directory, and we're going to go runtime, and I'm going to make a texture directory in there. You can save it anywhere you want. We're going to call it runtime texture. Now that it's exported the texture, I'm going to locate it in the project, and this is going to be under demo. All right, so runtime texture. I'm going to find the material here. You can see it here. Now there's a few features in here we don't need. Since we're creating 3D models, we don't actually need the height map or the normal map. So we're going to delete those. And in these examples, there's no illumination, so we don't need the illumination. You can use it if you want, but we don't actually need it. Okay. So now that we've created the material and textures, let's go back to our hierarchy, and we can select one or all of them. We're just going to export all of them. So we're going to go and select all of them, Ultra Real Assets, SurfForge, save as runtime mesh. And then we want to define a location for where to save it. So I'm just going to save it in this demo folder here. And that's fine. I'll just save it there. And now it's going to ask us to identify that material that we just saved. So I'm going to go in here, go under demo, go under runtime texture, and select that material. And it will go through and process all the geometry. All right, so it's done converting all of these. And in fact, we can highlight all of them here and see them in the interface here. And it went and applied the texture to all of them. One thing that's important to note about this process is it only does planar mappings straight down onto the geometry. This is simply a limitation of the workflow within SurfForge. It's not designed to create textures that can wrap around a piece of geometry that don't strictly have a set of UVs applied to them. But fortunately, it doesn't look too bad typically, and it's great for like maybe small pieces of things. One thing to note is the back sides are going to be hollow, and there are going to be some limitations to which types of tools within SurfForge you can use and still be able to get away with this process. But here, let me see if I can bring some of these in. Like, which one's a really good one? So they look pretty darn good. Now you will see some stretching on the edges. Like I said, it only can do a planar projection map. That's just one of the limitations associated with this. Some of the tools within SurfForge are not really going to be appropriate for this process. Let's see if I can create an example here. Like for instance, let's say I went into SurfForge and I decided to use one of the detail elements that has an undercut on it. Like for example, this one right here. This is not going to be a good tool to use for an export because it's going to end up exporting exactly like this, And what this type of mesh is designed for is to create an indent within the, and you really only want to use models that don't have these kind of indent features. So some of these are just going to be kind of out as far as being able to use for conversion. But fortunately, there are quite a few that actually work quite good with it. Like this is a really good example of one that would work really good for the conversion because it doesn't have any undercuts. And there's also some that have undercuts that you can get rid of the offending elements. Like for example, this screw here, you notice that it's in two parts. It's in the screw and it's in the undercut part. Now the undercut part's not going to work for this conversion, but you could, because it's going to end up leaving a piece of geometry that sticks up and looks kind of weird when it does the conversion. But you can go into the hierarchy view, select this see if I can select this object, and you'll notice it's in two parts. I'm going to unparent this one and then just get rid of that base. And now you've got an object that will, in fact, work correctly. Now, if you're clever, you could take and use the detail prefab save feature and save this as an alternate version of the screwdriver that you could, be able to use without having those undercuts if you want to use it. So there's that option as well. But that is the runtime conversion process, and I'll be interested to see what people do with it. I had a lot of fun making it, and it came out of the suggestion of one of the users who I'll refer to as Jay. Thank you very much. It was a very fun experience to try to make this work. I never would have thought I'd take the tool in this direction, but that seems to be the way this thing is going. So if anybody has any more suggestions for unique ideas, possible UV editing features, that kind of stuff, feel free to email me and give me your suggestions. Thank you. Bye.